Here's your wrestling news for January 25th, 2023. And we're kicking off today with Raw, as this week's 30th anniversary show was capped off with the return of Brock Lesnar. In the closing moments of the main event, Lesnar returned to interfere in the no DQ match between US champion Austin Theory and Bobby Lashley, F5ing both men before placing Theory on top for the pin. Lesnar's return was a huge moment, but it did mean that the fans in Philadelphia missed out on what would have been a stellar dark match. Mike Johnson of PW Insider reports that a post-show dark match was advertised that would have seen Theory take on Seth Rollins in a street fight, but that was nixed thanks to Lesnar's return. With Brock back and Lashley once again in his sights, the Almighty may have no choice but to reunite the Hurt Business with MVP, something the latter has been working on for weeks. While Lashley has been grateful to MVP for helping convince WWE to end his suspension, he hasn't been open to the idea of reuniting yet, but with Lesnar on the hunt for him, he could do with all the help he can get. With the Royal Rumble match this weekend and both men likely to appear, Lashley might want to make up his mind sooner rather than later, and after getting a win each in 2022, expect Brock and Bobby to lock horns one last time, presumably at WrestleMania 39. This week's Raw 30th anniversary show saw plenty of legends appear throughout the 3 hours, but not everyone who was advertised made it to the show. In the days prior to Raw, the Bellas had been advertised for the show, but not only did they not appear, but we now know why they weren't on TV. According to PW Insider, the Bellas did fly northeast this past weekend, but decided not to appear due to a disagreement with how women's wrestling would be featured. PW Insider has confirmed that Nikki and Brie Bella flew to the Northeast this weekend, but did not come to tonight's Raw 30. Instead, based on their social media, ended up attending a matinee performance of Broadway musical Wicked instead. We are told that the Bellas went on their Instagram live from their hotel room, implying that they didn't like that the company wasn't going to acknowledge the women's revolution, naming Mercedes Moné, Sasha Banks, and Saraya Paige as talents the company did not want acknowledged. The Bellas were once the queens of the women's division, with Nikki having the longest reign as WWE Divas Champion, but with this conflict with WWE, it remains to be seen when they'll be used on TV again. This week's show was meant to be a celebration of 30 years of the Red brand, but there was very little focus on women's wrestling's past or present. Almost no female legends were featured on the show, while the much-promoted women's steel cage match between Becky Lynch and Bayley never really got started. As we reported yesterday, it was a time constraint that forced WWE to change plans for the cage match, but it's safe to say that the fans were not happy and have let their voices be heard. Throughout all of yesterday, the hashtag WWEWomenDeserveBetter was trending on Twitter, with many fans calling out the company for how they glossed over their female talent. One fan blasted a promotional image of 30 years of the women's evolution as a lie, while another said that women had to endure 3 decades of cringeworthy misogynistic segments, and yet WWE couldn't find the time to showcase the impressive performances in women's wrestling. Since 2015, WWE has made a greater effort to treat women's wrestling more seriously and with more respect, but this week's Raw was a serious step backwards for this revolution. As reported earlier, part of the Bella Twins' decision not to appear was that they felt WWE would gloss over important names, including Saraya, who is now a regular on AEW programming. This news clearly reached the British wrestler, as on Twitter, Saraya said that she loves the Bellas and called them "my girls." Before signing with AEW, Triple H did make an attempt to re-sign Saraya following Vince McMahon's resignation, but between her signing with AEW and Vince McMahon's return, don't expect the Brit in a WWE ring anytime soon. Over to NXT, as Grayson Waller has risen the ranks of the Gold brand, as the arrogant Aussie likes to insult fans and opponents with his fantastic mic skills. Recently, Waller had his sights set on Bron Breakker's NXT Championship, and after losing to the champ in controversial fashion at New Year's Evil, Waller was in the mood for payback. Earlier this week, Waller goaded Breakker into a fight at the WWE Performance Center and was his usual arrogant self, insulting Bron and goading him into a fight by throwing water bottles. Now, though, Waller has issued an apology for what happened, saying in a video that he was sorry for once again embarrassing the WWE NXT champion. That apology to Bron Breakker probably didn't mean much, especially if you check out the "Bron Breakker is my t-shirt he was rocking during the video. Waller also apologized to WWE Performance Center trainer Norman Smiley, though did say that he spent the night watching Smiley falling over, something the Aussie found hilarious. Bron Breakker will defend the NXT Championship against Grayson Waller inside a steel cage at NXT Vengeance Day, and between this fight and the sneering apology video, it's clear that the Australian superstar is in the head of the NXT champion. Do you think this fight between Breakker and Waller was real or just a work? Let us know in the comments below. Now, WrestleMania 39 will be here before you know it, and the card is reportedly ready for WWE's biggest show of the year. While several stars will compete, The Rock is not likely one of them, as he believes he won't be in ring shape for the show and the rumored match with Roman Reigns, but WWE has a replacement. It's been reported that WWE is now planning on Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Reigns, a match that has not been hinted at on television yet, but that was not the original plan. A tenured member of WWE's creative team told Ringside News that originally the match was for Stone Cold to face Brock Lesnar, though that doesn't look to be the case anymore. Given that Lesnar returned on this week's Raw to cost Bobby Lashley his shot at the US title, it's clear that this feud will be continuing in time for WrestleMania. That source from Creative added that WWE did try and get Austin back in the ring again last year and was approached about a match at SummerSlam but didn't want to do it. It's not said who Austin was pitched for the July 2022 show, but only that he turned the match down. But with the Rattlesnake still in great shape as seen in his workout videos, expect him to lace up the boots one more time for WrestleMania 39. How do you feel about Austin's return to the ring? Are you excited that he's coming back, or should he leave it be? During this week's Raw, the much-promoted cage match between Becky Lynch and Bayley didn't go as planned, as the entire segment had to be cut to a couple of minutes. This segment was cut due to time constraints caused by other segments going long, namely the Bloodline's trial of Sami Zayn, and we've now learned more about what exactly was meant to happen. PW Insider reports that the man was going to get the win, which, given how Damage Control had been getting the better of her for some time, Lynch was due some payback. The steel cage match between Becky Lynch and Bayley did not go as envisioned on tonight's episode of Monday Night Raw, PW Insider has confirmed. The original plan was for Becky to win and then be beaten down by Damage Control. WWE's treatment of women on the show has proven to be an issue, as in addition to this women's match being cut very short, there was very little focus on the female legends during Raw's 30th anniversary show. While fans didn't see Lynch get the win, they did see her get beat down by Bayley, Io Sky, and Dakota Kai, and we'll have to wait for this match to happen in full. Last week, the wrestling world lost Jay Briscoe, and for Mark, he didn't just lose his tag team partner, but he also lost his brother. Ever since the accident, Mark has kept out of the public eye, but a family friend has given an update on the ROH World Tag Team Champion. Going live on Facebook, Josh Wharton, a Briscoe family friend, said that he had recently called Mark to discuss his mental health and that the ROH wrestler was the most chipper I'd ever heard him despite the circumstances. Wharton predicted that this is because of Mark's faith and is believed that he will see his brother again when it's his time to leave this earth. Josh also shared a text message from Mark saying, "God is on the throne," and added that Mark will carry on the Briscoe name and the Pugh name, as that is his real last name, proudly. Fans won't even have to wait long for the Briscoe name to be represented, as Mark will be on tonight's AEW Dynamite against Jay Lethal, a match requested by both men. Before Jay's passing, Warner Bros. Discovery refused to allow the Briscoes on TV, given controversial comments Jay made in the past, which he would work to amend. At the time of his death, it was said that Jay had been forgiven for his previous in-character homophobic comments and enjoyed the support of LGBTQ+ wrestlers, and we are thankful these comments will no longer hold his brother back on AEW programming. Mark's debut for AEW is a huge deal, as there was a time when it looked like this would never happen, but Tony Khan's tweet confirming the match came at an interesting time. It was only hours earlier that Dave Meltzer reported on Wrestling Observer Radio that Warner Bros. Discovery wanted no part of Mark due to the comments made by his brother in the early 2010s. This is clearly not the case, and on Twitter, Meltzer defended his report, saying that it was correct at the time of recording. It wasn't incorrect at the time, as noted by the situation just changing today. And if you listened, I said the situation could change. Imagine trying to use this as a gotcha rather than be happy the decision was changed. Meltzer did state on his show that the situation with Mark could change, but his tweet got a response from Eric Bischoff, who said, "But did you bother to get confirmation from both WB execs and AEW? If you did, then things do happen fast and it's possible there was a 180-degree turn of events overnight. If you didn't and went with the story, well, you know, #useful-idiot." The important thing to focus on now is that Mark is getting at least one shot on AEW programming, but clearly Bischoff has an issue with how Meltzer reported on this situation. When Brian Cage joined AEW, there was a lot of excitement about his future, but it's safe to say that his run hasn't gone well so far. Despite a strong start, Cage has become one of many floundering names who barely makes it to TV, and he may not be with AEW for much longer. Fightful Select reports that Cage's deal is set to expire within weeks, though no firm date on the expiration is known publicly at this time. It was only a year ago that fans expected Cage to be out of the door after he spent a lot of time off TV thanks to comments from his wife Melissa Santos about his position in the company. Rather than leave, Cage was moved to the ROH brand, where he is 1/3 of the 6-man tag team champions, but whether that'll save him from parting ways with AEW is yet to be seen. Fightful's report added that feelers have been sent out within the company to see if WWE would be interested in him, but it remains unclear how strong the interest is on either side. And for Cage himself, he will appear on tonight's AEW Dynamite, a rare appearance for him, where he'll face Bryan Danielson, but with the American Dragon expected to win this match, this may be one of the last times we see Brian Cage in AEW. Do you want to see Cage in WWE, or should he look to stick in AEW ROH and hope his position improves? Sound off in the comments. Back to WWE, and with this week's Raw being the 30th anniversary episode and a ton of legends promoted, it's hardly surprising that there was a lot of interest. Fans filled the Wells Fargo Arena in Philadelphia for the show, and the night was a record breaker for the Red brand. As confirmed by WWE, Raw delivered the highest domestic gate in the 3 decades of the Red brand, as Raw is 30 proved indeed to be another iconic and historic episode of WWE's flagship show. Speaking of filling arenas, WWE will be doing just that this weekend with the Royal Rumble, the official starting point on the road to WrestleMania. In addition to the 2 Rumble matches, Kevin Owens will face Roman Reigns, Alexa Bliss will take on Bianca Belair, and there will be the first Pitch Black match, and this card is proven to be effective. According to WrestleTix, WWE had sold 40,699 tickets at the time of their tweet, and with a capacity setup of 41,273, that means the show is a virtual sellout. The Royal Rumble is considered one of the most exciting nights of WWE's calendar, and this year should prove to be no exception as superstars look to punch their ticket on the road to WrestleMania in front of a capacity crowd.